Welcome Scorpio to your in-depth monthly horoscope for April 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for, but please stay with me. I will explore in much greater depth all the ins and outs, particularly relevant to your sign. Now, as we start this month, there's a very dynamic connection between Uranus and Jupiter in your sector of relating. Now, you may have heard they're going to come into an exact conjunction on the 21st. But the critical thing is your traditional ruler Mars is going to be hugely supportive to them. And also by then, the Sun will have moved into your sector of relationships. Venus also moves into your sector of relationships on the 29th of this month. So the first part of the month is going to be more practical, more about work, diet, fitness, making sure your life is working in an organised way. But the last phase of the month, very much about how you make those connections. But some of them could be very supercharged, as I will explain. But if you are new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. I interact with each comment. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for your company. I much appreciate all your likes, comments, shares and subscriptions. If you've yet to subscribe, I'm racing towards 120,000 subscribers. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. That means every time I drop a video, you will get an alert. And if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast and embrace the power of personal astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of your birth data of time and date and place, or if you don't know your time, date and place, I can produce for you your life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far, but also a much more intimate understanding of how to work with these energies more effectively going forwards. And in my special package of 30% off, you can also get your 12-month transit report. That's the moving planets in the sky interacting with that unique blueprint that only you were given when you were born. Please see the link below for more. Scorpio, on the screen now, you can see your event chart. And there is Uranus and Jupiter that I was just telling you about in your sector of relating, house 7. Really exciting. But look at the symbol of the moon and the sun. That's the midpoint. If we think about where the moon is in Sagittarius in your second house, and where the position of the sun is in the 6th house, and then we add them together, we get the exact midpoint between them. And for you, that's in house 4, so that's how you feel about things. But it can also be about family matters, where you live, how you live there. But key, you've got the transitional and transformational energy of your modern ruler Pluto right on your 4th house cusp. So having that and the midpoint in Aquarius in your 4th house suggests that your emotional world is going to be part of the story this month, but also Uranus is in a clash with that midpoint. So how you feel about things may not mesh quite as sweetly as you would like with how you relate to others, certainly not towards the beginning of the month. But having said that, you can see there's a big collective of energy in the sign of Aries, which is about those practicalities. The Sun, the node, Chiron, and also Mercury. Now, Mercury goes into a retrograde on the first day of this month. It's not there as we begin the month. It happens later that day and goes on for 23 days. Some kind of rethinking or rescheduling or resetting around how you think, Mercury, or discuss, Mercury, your obligations, 6th house, also your work, where you need to support others, where you need to be dedicated, precise, very 6th house, look at the details, but there could be some kind of shifts. New information could come in, inform your approach to diet particularly, but also health and fitness as well. But if you're not feeling very fulfilled in a job and it feels a bit dull, this could be a big month of transformation for you. So we need to be conscious of Mercury. But look at that energy in house 5. House 5 includes your ruler, your traditional ruler of Mars. And Mars is going to forge a very influential link to Jupiter and Uranus by the 21st in a very supportive way. But you can also see that we've got the more restrictive and more slowing energy of Saturn in the 5th house. So there could be a little bit of frustration. They're pretty close, about 6.5 degrees. But the other thing to point out is that Venus in the 5th house can be very romantic, and that's very close to Neptune. In fact, the part of fortune is parked up next to Venus. If there is someone who's really making your heart sing and you're feeling really loved up, that seems a magical alliance. It's just that if we look at the position of the moon, that squares up with Neptune, 2nd 5. If there is someone you really like, there could be a tendency to try to spoil them. Grand gestures, really pour in your warmth, affection, 5th house, and generosity, 2nd house, into priming up the relationship. That could be an error. Much better to see how things evolve, to be honest. And that energy in Aries is asking you actually to keep it quite grounded, because it's obviously 6th house energy is very earthy. So as much as there seems to be a very flirty, playful and romantic vibe, we can't forget that Saturn's there, and nor can we forget that the midpoint's in the 4th house of feelings in a very stormy right angle with Uranus. Maybe the case is that you're attracted to someone that people in your family don't like. Maybe you've been in a relationship or even in one now, but there's someone else showing an interest, but it could mean upsetting the proverbial celestial apple cart in order to embrace that person and that opportunity. So interesting stuff as we go into the month, but by the 3rd, there's a magical link between Venus and Neptune. It becomes exact. If someone's a true heart and your intentions are true as well, this can be one of the most beautiful alliances possible in astrology, but it also can be one of the biggest deceptive influences if someone isn't sincere. So just be aware of that. So having that 6th house energy can help you to just analyze things a little bit, just be a little bit more skeptical. Now the sun moves on from the start of the month to align with the retreating north node exactly on the 5th. This is a very beautiful alliance. Now it's possible that your north node isn't in Aries in your natal chart, and it isn't therefore in your 6th solar house or 6th natal house. But what we can do is look at this event in a collective sense as a Scorpio. So maybe you're being called in a particular direction in terms of your work, your sacrifices, your obligations, where you're very responsible, the 6th house. And maybe it's requiring a shift from where you are now. Listen to your 6th sense, because the North Node is very much about an imperceptible pull towards some new objective. So if you find yourself being pulled towards a new approach, a fresh way of eating or exercising, do be very open to it. But on the 5th too, Venus, the planet of love and affection, moves out of the glam 5th house and into the crunchingly responsible 6th. Venus in Virgo is known as being in its fall. So you could argue it's not very sexy. In a technical sense, Venus in Aries is also detrimented. Don't take any notice at all. I really think this is one of those essential dignities that we should really challenge. Venus in Aries gives people gumption and a bit of desire to use the fire of Aries to get what they want. Why not? But it also forges a very deep link to Pluto, your modern ruler, the first time for over 200 years. So Pluto newly in that sector of emotion, feeling, maybe pushing you to transform part of your physical structures or your inner emotional world. And that could be true of relationships. Is it saying to you, this alliance, that maybe you need to be a little bit more sacrificing? Not always just be so focused on the more romantic dimension or what you want. How can you do things for the other person? Even making them a lovely cup of tea in bed. It may not sound hugely romantic, but that kind of sacrifice can actually draw people very close together. So that could be a very special moment. But then we have the total solar eclipse, as it will be in the States, on the 8th. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's on the 9th, in the sign of Aries, providing a backdrop of energy for the next 6 months. But it does connect by just 1 minute out with Chiron. Chiron in the 6th house. Chiron in the 6th house, if someone had that natally, they're probably brilliant at coaching people on what to eat and drink. Oh, you need to try this supplement, absolutely fantastic. Oh, this particular mineral, or this thing will help you sleep better or give you more energy. They really have a gift for that. Or they could be someone who work in food distribution or run a supermarket. Or they could be someone who may be a coach when it comes to physical exercise, a fitness trainer. But what about what they get back? And that's the nub or key with Chiron, because that's the glyph for Chiron. What's the key? So what knowledge can you gain over the next 6 months about refining in perhaps step-by-step ways, marginal gains, little bits and details about your life structure? And it could be that if you feel unfulfilled, that other people are not very acknowledging about your sacrifice, how hard you work, how dedicated you are. You need to work on feeding that sense of worth into yourself. So that can be a critical point for us all. From the 10th to the 13th, the retreating Mercury meets the advancing Sun. It's exact on the 11th. It's a cazimi. It's an inferior conjunction because Mercury is this side of the Sun due to its retrograde. But we can still gain a lot. Again, you can grapple with the details. Mercury retrogrades can cause glitches, we know that. And if you do have an appointment, just a standard routine, regular appointment to have your bloods done or your blood pressure checked, or it's to do with your pet, their annual inoculation, all very 6th house stuff, yes, Mercury could cause some mischief. But also it can provide so many opportunities to rethink or discuss anything to do with your work, your responsibilities, your obligations. Also, we're going to have a phenomenal link between Mercury and Chiron on the 13th. From the 14th to the 19th, Mercury and Venus meet together, exact on the 19th. That's one of the most lovely aspects in astrology. Okay, again in the 6th, might not seem very sexy, but you can have a discussion, perhaps an interview across those days and be offered a new job. Also, Venus applies to the node on the 17th, to Chiron on the 21st. Perhaps forgiving ourselves a little bit about something that's not quite perfect in our life may be important. But then the Sun starts to apply in a right angle to Pluto. It did this last year, but this is going to be felt a little bit more keenly, I feel, because hot on the heels of the Sun moving into the sign of Taurus, your 7th house, we're going to have Venus also clashing with Pluto, and we have the full moon in your sign on the 23rd also being T-squared by Pluto. So let's unpack all of this. The Sun moving into your 7th house gives you an opportunity to think about relationships, but I think the 7th house, traditional astrology says it's the sector of open enemies, so that's the people we know aren't for us, but we know we have to engage with them. Could be colleagues that we find grumpy, a boss who's too demanding, but we still have to collaborate. Or it may be that we enjoy sport, particularly if you're someone who likes sort of one-to-one sports like badminton, squash, tennis, because it's combative. And the 7th house can be about where we set our boundaries. It's not all about just relating, because that in a way is a one-sided view of it. Because what about the other person's needs to relate? So if we set our boundaries and we're clear about what we want to give, what we expect to give, but also what we expect to get, then we can have more honest relationships and contacts with others. So I feel that the Sun moving but clashing with Pluto could bring up any politics around an existing relationship, or make you much more aware of someone you're interested in. Does it feel right? If it doesn't feel right, let's go back to that midpoint at the start of the month. It was in your fourth house of feeling and it clashed with Uranus. Don't compromise your individuality for the wrong relationship. But then on the 21st, Jupiter and Uranus come together for the first time in 14 years, supported by your ruler, traditional ruler Mars, in a great part of your scope, the fifth house. So it's shrugged off the more limiting energies of Saturn. And if there is someone that you really have a mesmeric connection with, because Uranus can see things happen very quickly, and there could be a spark which really is very exciting, but the sun's still so close to the right angle with Pluto, then the full moon of the 23rd in your sign, and it's all about relationships. So if you felt unheard, unrespected, that someone wasn't meeting your needs in terms of your boundaries, you may actually want to bail out, which takes us back to that midpoint, squaring up to Uranus at the start of the month. Now, Mercury goes direct on the 24th, which is welcome. If there have been or has been a sense of brittleness or inflexibility or tension, that can ease a bit, but it doesn't come out of the post-retrograde shadow until the 13th of May. Just be aware of that. But on the 29th, Venus moves into its home sign of Taurus, which on the face of it is delicious. We've got the combination of the 7th house energy, very Libra and about relating, but also an appreciation of the good things. If you did go on a date, go out and eat for sure. Eat and drink. It would be delightful. But again, if you feel pulled towards somebody because of what they may do for a living, or because, they're quite well off, or because you feel that there's some kind of benefit that goes beyond just the idealism of a lovely relationship, just check your motives. But if your motives are squeaky clean, what about the other person? So we need to be very honest about relationships, I feel, at the end of this month. So as much as that Jupiter-Uranus aspect will be flagged up all over YouTube as being incredible, we've got to look at the big picture. And for sure, your traditional ruler Mars does support it brilliantly, but there's other complex energies going on, and really it all goes back to how you feel, because that's where Pluto is, that's where the midpoint is at the start of the month. The month does start with the potential for a magical connection. It does get much more to do with practicalities, routines, work, responsibilities and obligations. There could be some snags, some tensions, but also some opportunities. Then the focus is very much on relationships as this month comes to a close. If you're in a relationship where you both are totally all in, but very good at listening to where each of you are coming from, this could be a superb end to the month, as Mars, your traditional ruler, applies to Neptune in the fifth house. If not, you may end the month feeling a bit dispirited and unsure about where you really stand. But as you go into May, your traditional ruler Mars bursts into Aries, which it rules, but that's the sixth house, and it really is going to give you a much greater energy and vitality to deal with any facet of your life. And it's going to be there for 6 weeks and give you a great opportunity just to really maneuver and negotiate all the different elements of your situation. So this month, without doubt, could start quite magically. It does require you to be realistic, but also understand the psychology around your relationships as it comes to a close. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Scorpio. Be honoured if you would like, comment, share or subscribe.